Good show?
We are. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Where's the Riverdale jacket?
It's good. Overwhelming.
It's too hot for the Riverdale.
Yeah.
For those of us with audio, could you each say your names?
Sure. My name's Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa.
And I'm Casey Cott.
So it sounds like the show's going a bit darker this season. So the group as a whole, is it going to be splintered and broken up? Are they going to draw closer together?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's definitely well, Jughead is going to Southside High,
Yeah.
which is the big thing. And it's funny, in the first episode, because it's really focused on the direct aftermath of season 1, the gang is together, which is really, really nice. And even in season 2, Cops, which is the iconic symbol of Riverdale, is under fire, so the gang kind of comes together to save that. But then, and I think partly it was, those were just the stories we were telling, but partly was I didn't want to start splitting them up, but with the season 3, you can start seeing kind of cracks amongst the group. It's a big episode for Kevin, and some of the core relationships, like Kevin and Betty's friendship, gets, I think we could say it gets really tested.
Yeah, after 13 episodes, obviously there was a lot of drama in season 1, but there's a lot of relationships that have bubbling, underlying underbelly drama waiting to kind of explode, and I think that it starts to in a very organic way, and it's really wonderful to watch, or to play, and hopefully to watch, but it is. I'm sure it's going to be great.
But for me, the reason I loved growing up the Archie characters is because I wanted to be friends with those kids. Like, that was it, because people are like, I've been trying to do this show for the last 15 years, and I would talk about it, and people are like, why are you obsessed with the Archie characters?
How can you not be?
Well, exactly. And I was like, and I was like, why am I obsessed? And I was like, oh, I want to be friends with them.
Yeah.
So despite all of the things, I think at core it's a show about there's always an aspirational element to be friends with these kids. So there's always trouble, but I hope they'll always come together. I hope.
So if we could take it back to season 1 just for a moment, obviously a lot of those scenes were very emotionally intense. So for you as director, writer, producer, working in that aspect, what was most hard for you to kind of put onto paper? And then for you, which of the scenes were hardest to play?
I think for me, the thing that's most upsetting, honestly, is when Betty and Veronica fight. There's only like 1 or 2 moments in season 1 where they fight, and it's really upsetting to me. There's also in season 2, in the premiere, it's a really stressful time for Archie, and he and Veronica have a very fractured moment in times of stress, and it's really upsetting when they're not there. So that to me is the hardest thing to write and see.
This is a bad answer to your question, but
It's okay.
the most difficult scenes I've had have been in season 2 in terms of intensity. I think one scene that was kind of tricky actually was during the pilot. First of all, starting with Moose and I walking down that lane and then discovering Jason's body. Just like, I don't know if you discovered a dead body by the river at any time, but it was a really cool shot. We were deep in the mountains. Our director was amazing, but I remembered it was very technical, tripping over the leg, and then popping up and seeing the body in the water. That was probably the most tricky scene, because it's also a scene you really want to get right.
Exactly. You pulled it off. I can
Thank you.
that.
Yeah,
And I have a vivid memory. That was like one of the, that may have been the last, one of the next, it was not the last day, but it was the next to last day. It was the last time we were going to be in the mountains. It was the last shot of the day. We were over, and the producer was like, we're going to pull the plug, and we were like, we haven't gotten it, and it was so stressful.
Yeah. And it was my first episode of television ever, so I was like, I'm doing something wrong. But luckily, most of the scenes, honestly, we have such a good rapport that it starts to say the words, and after you do them a couple times, it just becomes pretty organic and pretty fun. Yeah. And the writers are okay, so
Roberto, now that you've ask them after this. The last question.
Are you ready to start exploring the further Archieverse?
Yeah, we are introducing other characters for sure. And yeah, listen, my dream is to be able to help bring to life the other Archie franchises, kind of like the way Greg has brought to life so many of the superhero franchises. But it's like in a way, your first love is your truest love. So there's so much to do with Riverdale. There's so many characters and stories. But I'd love to do that. That's for sure.
All right,
Thank you guys.
Thank you.